thing that I'm doing with AskaPathfinder, where I actually just answer the questions that have been asked to me on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you guys are contacting me. I've got tons of these that have come in every single week. People asking questions about how to play the game. People asking questions about how to best, go over their, prep work and stuff like that. Today we're just going to be focusing on a couple of small ones that I've been, kind of looking into for quite some time. If you got any questions or anything you want to ask while this stream is going on, feel free to throw things into the chat and I'll have a look at it. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is invisible characters. Now this message came about a week ago where a GM was having trouble handling a character who could readily turn invisible and how they were supposed to manage it. Now, straight up, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can handle invisible PCs. Obviously put in characters or monsters that have the ability to track down the PC, but there are some other very simple ways to approach dealing with invisible characters. First up is I would highly recommend that you carry a bag of flour. Believe it or not, there is actually rules within the Pathfinder game that you can use a bag of flour in order to try and locate a hidden enemy or PC within a 5-foot square. So simply by dragging a bag of flour out, hucking it at a square, all of a sudden you've revealed the location of an invisible character. I don't recommend doing this all the time because it looks ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine like a whole group of guards? All right, men, listen up. We are going in and we're going to be capturing these guys. They destroyed the tavern. They've made a mockery of our king, and we need to make sure that we're going to catch them. But they can all turn invisible. So grab your bag of flour because we're going to find these guys. Yeah, no, makes them look silly. But they do work. So if you have like a trap that is set for your PCs, like let's say for example that they have been known to constantly cause trouble in a particular area, you might find that there is in fact a supply of flour nearby because they're expecting the PCs to cause trouble. And that's a good way to kind of, countermeasure that. Next up is supernatural senses, right? Now, PCs, it's almost impossible to try and get a supernatural sense, like blind sense, blind sense, blind sight, tremor sense, life sense. All these senses are incredibly difficult to find in the game, especially for your character. But for monsters, they're everywhere. And there's no reason why any kind of villain couldn't have used one of these monsters to help them out. Very simple use of dogs, for example, could be that, yes, well, the PCs are hiding. Fantastic. Let them hide. Let them run. But we have hounds. We will find them. Yes, they've gone this way. No, that's fine. Look, they've escaped. Oh no, let them escape. Allow them to feel that way, and then ring terror to your players as they can hear the sounds of wolves howling in the background. You change the dynamic of your game. When you are a PC and you create an invisible character, or someone who specializes in like an insane amount of stealth, there is a certain level of invulnerability we can often feel, very mistakenly, when we are unseen. Yes, that's right. He is completely unaware of my presence. I can sneak up behind him and take his pants. No, yeah, you can. I can absolutely do that, but you're not invulnerable. You're not immune to the effects that influence your character. You're simply unseen. So they could be on guard, and they could have a readied action. If someone tries to take something off me, I'm going to stab at that nearest square. Readied actions are a great way to get through invisibility. And I'll tell you why. I had a scenario happen to me a few years back, and I was dealing with a character that had greater invisibility. Now, I was the PC in this case, but the mechanics still apply. What I basically had to deal with was I would take a step, swing at a square, 50% mischance, I'd hit nothing. Or I wouldn't even get a roll because he wasn't in that square. And this invisible character just kept coming at me. So I told my GM, look, I want to wait for the moment for when he stabs me, when I can feel the blade inside me, and I want to make a grapple check on that spot. The GM was pretty nice, and he said, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, I don't see why he'd get a 50% mischance if he is literally in a spot touching you. You know what I mean? Like if they're touching you, then yeah, you know exactly where it's touching you. And you let me roll for that. In the same way, you can have readied actions ready to go when someone's trying to steal stuff. If someone's trying to steal stuff off me, I'm going to attack the square that my stuff is being pulled. So it's like you sit there and you're thinking, okay, cool, and then, and whether or not you hit, that's entirely a different matter. But, you know, that's another way to really get around it. So, yeah, those are some of the ways that I would use to get around dealing with invisibility as a GM, and my players were very good at it. Now, keeping in mind, and I'm gonna sort of prefix this with a very important message. It is important to allow your players to have some catharsis, and I find this often with munchkins, power gamers, you know, all the negative words that we have for power builders and murder hobos. GMs don't like giving them stuff. And I know that the reason is because they can be really snide and cocky about it because it's like, oh, yeah, I've built this really cool thing and I'm going to show you and put it in your game and break it. Look, I've killed someone. What are you going to do about it? Yeah, that happens. That legitimately happens at some tables. And if it's never happened at your table, that's awesome. I hope it never happens to you. But that's why some GMs just get to a point where they're like, well, I don't want to give this guy something. Yeah, he built something really cool. He built something really well. But why should I reward him when he's just being a knob? Well, okay, there's some truth to that. If they're being a knob, then yeah, you don't want to reward them for doing it. But you don't want to, you know, sort of hold back on what they've truly earned. They've earned the reward of being able to succeed at their challenge. And you need to be able to kind of facilitate that so that they can enjoy the game as well. A good example of this is I had a guy who had, I think, like 15, 20 something initiative, and he'd always go first. But the thing is every time he went first, he would always brag on about it. He'd always talk about it. He'd always yell. He'd always kick. He'd always scream. And it just got so frustrating. It just got so annoying that I was tired of it, and I basically said, yeah, oh, guess what? This guy has 50 initiative. What are you going to do about it? In hindsight, that was very petty of me, and I wasn't very keen on it, but, you know, like, if you do that to your players at all times, eventually you're just going to isolate them. You're going to turn them into a person who goes, well, if I can't power game with you, I'm going to power game with someone else. And then you're inflicting that person on the rest of us, okay? So give some catharsis. Allow them, you know, a little bit of that rope to, you know, be able to express their power gaming, murder hobo-iness. And then hopefully by the time they've done it, they've felt a sense of achievement. They felt that relief, and they can, you know, move on to bigger and better things. Okay, so actually kind of went over time for my stuff, but the last thing I want to bring up is actually in response as well to Guy's video on how to deal with flying creatures. If you don't know who Guy is, head on over to How to Be a Great Game Master. It's a fantastic series. Lots of really cool stuff on that channel for advice and general RPG stuff. Read Pathfinder. Flying is not as difficult as many people make it out to be. The biggest thing that trips people up is, what do you do on diagonals? How do you kind of measure the distance between this person and that person if that person's around a corner but I've still got elevation, blah, 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 blah. Don't hypermaths. Simple answer. Do not hypermaths this. If you're looking at how to maneuver around flying, go with the simplest answer. Always make a fly check if something doesn't make sense. Set the goal anywhere between 15 and 20. 25 if it's during a hurricane, you know. Always make sure that there is some way for your PCs to progress. Never get to the point where you're flying up there and just shooting arrows at a group of melee fighters. That's not fair, that's not fun, don't do it. If you're dealing with a PC that flies, have equal amounts of stuff for them flying and being able to explore their flight, as well as, you know, the kind of closed dungeon crawl inside of a building battles, because, yeah, they happen as well. And no, you can't fly indoors, because as you fly indoors, you are going to be kicking up dirt and dust, and everyone's going to be kind of hindered by the fact that you are, you know, constantly flapping these massive wings. Well, I mean, in some cases. Or you're flying, you know, with spells, which I like to have wind as a part of that spell, but that's just my personal thing. yeah, always make sure that you play the field. You make sure that there is enough variety, that there is both a benefit to reply for that catharsis we were talking about, as well as the, you can't really use it all the time. Alright guys, well that's all I got time for. Thank you very much for joining us. This is just the first one that I'm going to do. I might pop in every once in a while and say, hi, how are you guys? Here's a really interesting question I'm going to share with you. If you have any questions or if you have anything you'd like covered, leave a comment below or go visit us on Facebook or Discord at www.facebook.com/AskaPathfinder or at discord.me/AskaPathfinder, and you can basically find me there and I'll answer your question. Until next time, guys, as always, keep your dice rolling and make sure your ideas stay mindworm free. Have a good one.